Welcome to the podcast, Raw Lessons Revealed. I'm your host, Craig T. Ingram, coming to you live from Austin, Texas. On this podcast, you will never hear empty words or worthless content because you are about to listen to real, genuine, no-nonsense lessons from a business strategist who is currently the Chief Strategy Officer at Chet Holmes International, and also a business coach who rolls up his sleeves and digs into his clients' needs for transformation. Troy Aberle started out from his early days of innovation on a family farm, and over time became a sales consultant for a farm implement dealer in Canada. And in 2017, won an international prestigious award as the most profitable sales representative in North America for John Deere. He is now a beacon of light guiding CEOs, entrepreneurs, and professionals across various industries through transformative journeys that redefine the business people are in and unlocks them to their fullest potential. So with all that said, let's dive in and talk to another ultra successful business person who we can learn from and help transform our businesses. Well, Troy, welcome to Raw Lessons Revealed. This is a podcast that is starting to really take the world by storm. I'm getting so many people that are enjoying some celebrities like Caroline Stanbury, Sergio Corallo, and then literally liquid net worth billionaires like Joe Foster, the co-founder, CEO and chairman of the board of Reebok. And so I'm trying to take people who have invested in me, I've invested in them. We've worked together on a few projects. We've either potentially been on some masterminds together. And I'm weaving those people in because just because you're not a billionaire or you're worth nine figures doesn't mean you don't have something to offer. And you definitely have something to offer because you have been very, very successful, literally in the top 1/2 of 1% of all income earners in the world. And so it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
It's a pleasure to be here, Craig. Thank you for a great introduction and congratulations. The value and the people, it's a phenomenal community to pay attention to and be involved with.
Well, it's interesting. I think that these people have decided to come on is because they've heard about my loyalty, right? And I'm not trying to make it all about me, but I'm just saying loyalty is something you do. It's something who you are. It's not something you say, right? And so we can either be loyal to people or loyal to an opportunity. And if you're loyal to an opportunity, you can't be loyal to people. And with that being said, thank you for your loyalty as well to me. And I want to reciprocate that back to you, literally for the rest of my life. And with that being said, tell me a little bit about how you use loyalty in the commercialization process, right? There's 10 components of commercialization. One of them is selling, right? And we can either be moderately effective, we can be ultra effective, or we can be the completely opposite and be ineffective. Tell me a little bit how you use that together in building your business over the last couple decades.
It is a great question. And I think, out of all the people that I've worked with or continue to work with, I think the simplest thing that if I was to restart everything all over again, I would chunk it down into 4 parts. And one is really getting crystal clear on what my outcome and my goal is so that my intentions can be very pure, very intentional. And I can understand what are the things that are going to keep me from getting to that goal that I already know, and what are the things that are going to help me get there. And I think it can sound cliche or vanilla, if you will, but I don't think people really truly do understand exactly what that life looks like. You and I had talked a little bit off camera about what does it look like to be at the top of the game of a CEO of a Fortune company? That does it magically all of a sudden mean that you get 3 golf memberships and a private jet? And, what does that actually mean? But your goal has to come from you so that you can understand and be able to share that not only with yourself, but share that with your family and the other your other people that you're partnered with in this journey, so that everybody has clarity as to what's going on, not just guessing and wondering, and then, where do things change and how to help each other guide your back towards that end result. Number two is really identifying really who is the client that you want to work with and do business with. I think so many people right now are in this vicious cycle, Craig, of trying to just say it and spray it in so many ways. And people are spending an awful amount of money trying to do hopeful selling with a shotgun, where I think that we need to go back to a
Yeah.
bit of a sleeper approach.
Yeah.
And with that, I look at one of my mentors, Chet Holmes, had said that when Charlie Munger had offered him the opportunity to work for him, he had said, call, 2 or 3,000 people. And Chet said, well, I can't. I need to look at 100 of the most, profitable people, the lowest hanging fruit. So I look at that from a mental profitability, but also a financial profitability. Part three of the four pieces that I'm talking about today, Craig, part three is how are we getting people's attention that shows that we actually do care about that dream client and what they're going through in life?
Mm-hmm.
How do we talk to them about what's really going on and how the market and the industry is working? Being supported with data or data, however you're supposed to say it. I'm in Canada. And when we look at how do we couple our story? How do we couple data so that we can really be compelling and authentic and very educated on what we're doing? And then being able to then portray that to the customer to reset the buying criteria so that they have better understanding of what it is that they're even doing while engaged in the business with you. That also gives an opportunity for me to add value to people that's above and beyond just a transaction, but so that I can show people that I am loyal to helping them with a greater good. Number four is consistency and communication and follow up, right? What is the process that I'm going to follow up? Is this a one night stand type of thing? Or is this going to be, or am I going to truly treat this like a relationship? And I actually talk to people in business about dating. If you think about how you do create emotional connection with the person you're interested in or courting or working towards building a solid foundation with, what are you doing? You're having consistency, you're having emotional experience, you do understand their needs and creating extra value and being able to have that all encompassed in one. And that brings that trust all together, because then people feel the entire time they know your goal. They know that there's somebody who you can really help because you've been intentional about that dream person. You understand what's keeping them up at night, and that's where you're coming up with the education.
Yeah.
And you're consistent about it. That's how I look at business today. Right?
Man, I like that. Those 4 points are so critical. And from your perspective, how many director level and above executives do you think are hitting even 50% of those 4 points, in your opinion?
I'd say less than 17%.
Wow.
Because it's, if you look at the studies, we're in that 81 to 83% of the people that, we've surveyed and worked with, really understanding that people do have a lot of uncertainty in their business or with their position in the business. They can understand the foothold in their company, but we've seen companies, enough examples such as Sears, Kodak. You look at how many companies have been monsters as we were growing up and had all the opportunity to do what the Amazons and everyone else was doing, but they get complacent and within hours they've dissolved. And I think that is where I think when you take a look at this framework, rather than how it's been done before, but where it must go. And, Tony Robbins said, success leaves clues. I think failures do too. And if we take a look at that and apply that to our business to make sure we're adapting the right clues.
It's funny you say that, because nobody wants to talk about scar tissue. And yet we all have scar tissue when it comes to business, right? Like, it's amazing. With you being up in Canada, right? Yep. You've done business in Canada. You made millions in Canada, right? Selling farm implement equipment, but you've also done business in the US.
Yes.
And what would you say is the biggest difference between doing business in Canada and business in the US?
I think that there's more competition in the United States in terms of, because there's more people, but I also think that there's not enough competition sometimes in Canada that shows more significance to market stability. If you take a look in Canada, like I've worked in oil and gas, the solar energy industry, industrial supplies, and most of and for John Deere. And if you think about like everything I've been working for is actually a US based companies.
Sure.
So the challenges are real. I think, Craig, That's a really good question. I think that the business, no matter what, here's the deal. It's all the same when you understand what it is that you are doing, who your ideal client really is, and making sure the service or the product that you sell matches up with what it is that they're looking for. And becoming the best at everything you do, becoming the most expensive, but having the most value to back up that price tag, I would say is unanimous no matter what part of this globe you're in.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I don't know what the statistics are in Canada, but the real statistics in 2023 and in 2022, they didn't change, was 33 million registered businesses, LLCs, C Corps, and S Corps, right, in the United States. 93.4% of them never reach $1 million in revenue.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's that I was shocked when one of my business coaches, who's literally worth 400 million liquid net worth, he's taken 3 companies to over $1 billion in revenue. He's done it 3 times. And just to be able to do that once is virtually impossible. And this guy's done it 3 times, right? And of course he works for private equity and stuff like that. So to have some money behind him is helpful. But if it doesn't work small, it's not going to work large. Right. And I'm in the med tech and health technology industry. And I find that so many executive level founders and early stage and even mid stage startups think that if they just had all this investment money, then they can scale. And yet, according to the people who've done it, it's the complete opposite. But it seems like nobody's learning. Why do you think that is?
It's a great question. It's funny. I'm on a board for a really prestigious investment group that funds startups and projects in the healthcare industry and in biotech. And the one gentleman, he's raised over $500 billion he's been a part of.
Wow.
And he said to me, like, I had thought, 25 to 30% of businesses actually take off in medical, and it's lower than 15, according to him. What happens is they get,
It's
10 to
true.
20.
That is spot on, by the way.
Well, and there's no proper planning. And I think a lot of people don't understand how business really works, Craig. And I don't want to say that disrespectfully. We get the whole buy and sell and profit margins and whatnot.
Right.
But I don't think people really truly understand how to scale. They start off as a small business. The vision isn't big enough to push them. They don't already have if they don't have that goal in mind, and they don't have the short-term and the long-term goals coordinated so that when we're at this spot, we hire this person, when we do this, what are those pieces to building up that castle, if you will? And what happens is we borrow money from our friends, our family, grandma, a loan.
Yeah.
And we build up this business, we put up the sign, and we hope that we get there. And I think that's the problem. You can't afford to pay to play. And, HubSpot proved it now that we've literally burnt out our entire audience with so much advertisement.
Right.
So to answer your question, I think what's happening is people are hoping that their business takes off, but they're not actually designing a blueprint that will actually ensure that it does what it does, and already having the pieces in play so that when you get to a certain level that you can already keep scaling. Imagine when the pandemic came, if Zoom didn't have the backing to throw in a whole ton of servers, Zoom would already be gone. Right. So you have to have the pieces or the infrastructure in place to say, you know what, this is the marketplace. This is the percentage we want to go after. Here's how much money that we're going to spend to do that. And that might be just a small little leather repair shop in your small town.
Right.
But if you don't have any business and you're hoping, you can't do it on hope. You have to have a blueprint and a plan that's guided away. And then your accountant, your lawyers, to the investors, everybody has to be a part of that blueprint so that you're synchronized in one thing, so that you're not awake at night fighting with your spouse about all the problems and challenges. Then you come into work the next day and now you're in fight or flight mode. Well, now emotionally that you've got some challenges, your staff are going to have challenges, and the customer's going to feel what's happening in the inside. They're going to feel a weakness on the outside, and they'll go to companies that have more of a foothold that make them feel more secure. And that energy just keeps flowing along the way. So if you don't have it here in your mind and you don't have it portrayed and laid out carefully, I think that's where a lot of people mess up. And I'd say that even doesn't matter what size it is, it's a bigger problem when it gets into the hundreds of millions.
Yeah, because if it doesn't work small, it's definitely not going to work big just because you got some finances behind it, right? It has to work small first. It's interesting because, my my main job now is to work with, early stage and mid stage companies to help them commercialize more effectively. It's all about effectiveness. And when I talk to not just C-level executives, but even VPs, and I'm like, let's talk about your commercialization plan. And they always kind of like look at me like this, like with a frowed brow, right? And I'm like, they're like, oh, we already have that. And I'm like, so you've got your business plan. Do you have a multi-page bespoke commercialization plan that is a section of your or a component of your overall business plan? And when I start asking deeper questions, I find out that I'm talking like literally 9 out of 10 companies don't have it.
Yeah.
And I find that what you've taught me, even though having a core story, right, is so critical. But they think that commercialization is just selling and marketing, but it's so many more components to encompass the whole communication and buying journey of a paying customer or client. Tell my audience a little bit about the core story and how it's literally transformed the commercialization process and more marketing than really selling, because the marketing is communicating of your product and service and what it does for them, which I think is more potent and at a higher priority than even selling. Because if people don't know what you have and what it's going to do for them, they don't need any help going over the hump because the hump's not there. Right? You know
Exactly.
what I mean?
I think that, the best way to describe a core story, Chet Holmes introduced the core story many years ago. And, unfortunately, Chet passed away a little over 11 years ago now. But the concept doesn't change, and it completely changed my life, because even though, I was doing really good in the equipment business, I didn't realize when push come to shove and challenges in the environment became so great, things were really struggling for us and my team. And even though I'd won awards and done really, really well across, the North American market, what I'd realized was I was saying the same thing as all of my competitors, and we were offering the same programs of low interest rates, maybe a sleeve of golf balls and a hat.
Right.
I know that sounds funny, but there is a dealer right now that's offering free trips if you purchase a $700,000 piece of equipment, and just really, really weak marketing that's become so commission breath. The core story, and when Amanda Holmes taught me one thing, she taught me about global pain. When her dad had taught me so many things, Amanda's Chet's daughter, for those who don't know, and she's the CEO of the company now today and my business partner. And when Amanda talked to me about global pain, I didn't really understand what global pain was, but I turned it into kitchen table pain. And what had happened is I'd realized, what is that light over top the kitchen table where the family is sitting there talking about the mountain of bills and not being able to get enough staff, the rate of suicide being really high in mental health. All of these things were compounding that I'd learned. And so what I was able to do is now completely create a story that energized the whole industry completely different. The core story has two components. It has a stadium pitch. So now I could go to my customers to say, who here is ready to fail in 2022? And people would say, what do you mean fail? And I'm like, well, that's bad, but I'm talking about failing mentally and with your own self, because of depression and anxiety, but also failing your relationships, because it also turns out your industry has the highest rate of depression, divorce, and children with behavioral problems.
Right.
And so they're like, wow, this person knows a completely different angle of us and something that no one's talking to us about. So that first part of the core story is that stadium pitch where I could really grab their attention and stand out in a way that's completely different than saying, hey, we have really low interest rates.
I love it.
Then I talk to them about the meat of the core story. And the meat of the core story is designed to be able to talk people through data, story, understanding where the position of the marketplace is today, what's going on in it, what are people going through in the market, and then being able to educate them on the criteria that they should use to move forward, and then position your company is matched up with the curriculum that's there. Now, that data isn't just off the cuff or on ChatGPT. This This is the teams of people studying your ideal client
Yeah.
that are going to get you to your goal the fastest, educate that buyer, give them the right criteria, and already preload them with the objections that your sales team hardly can ever answer because it's usually just price. I'd like price always to be number fourth or number fifth in your business offer or as an objection for your audience because I've educated them so much with the core story. So what does that do? It's not just about marketing. Well, it is. Marketing and sales are two totally different things or advertisement. But if you think about
Yep.
this confirms whether or not your product or service actually matters to somebody, what the price point is, what the market opportunity is in your AOR, what's a market share you want to go after that's going to give you the satisfaction of your goal. But that also stimulates your internal staff because they see growth, they see metrics, they see all of the things that are going on. And now when you're around a boardroom table and you understand all these things about the customer and getting these transactions to happen and you know what the market share is, ask how many of your customers that you understand market share. But what happens is now you can make decisions on should we advertise on a billboard? Should we be going to that conference to speak at? What, should we be hiring more salespeople or laying people off because we're either moving towards that goal or we're not? And it's the core story that actually pulls all of that together so that your internal message and your external message align.
I love it. I'll tell you what, tell me one last question. What is the raw lesson to every business owner, every employee, anyone who's in business? What is that raw lesson that you want to reveal today?
Define what it means to be successful. And from a mental perspective, so that you can sit down and look ahead 5-10 years from now and say, I'm so happy I'm sitting on that park bench and here's what I'm looking at in my life. And this is the feeling I have. Reverse that. I know this might sound a little bit cliche, but take that end goal, that C-type goal, like Bob Proctor would say, that's a fantasy, that's a stretch. Bring that backwards and look at the components you need. If you need investors and different people and all of that to make sure that you stay as a visionary and you have people integrating the pieces in behind you, have that blueprint laid out so that it's very concise. Things are going to change every hour and every day.
Right.
But at least it has the foundation so that you can keep coming back to your team when things are up and when things are down, but it keeps you on that trajectory so that your airplane lands where it said it was going to at approximately what time, and hopefully with enough fuel.
That's awesome. Hey, if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Two ways. You can go to coach at troyaberle.com or you can go to troy at chatholmes.com.
Perfect. Thank you, man. Appreciate you being on the program.
I appreciate the opportunity. And, and in a time when people are having confusion, chunk it down into 4 pieces, and I promise you'll have a different outcome.
I love it. Wow. Well, those are our raw lessons revealed to us on this episode from a man who clearly took advantage of the business coaching that was offered to him, and it sure paid off. In order to make any type of authentic impact in business, one has to spend a lot of time in the quote unquote off hours, fine tuning their craft. And in Troy's instance, his craft was learning how to strategically sell effectively, and then transforming that craft into a new craft of a business strategist, which is actually needed in all industries because every company in every industry needs to learn how to incorporate the 4 pillars of clarity that Troy talked about into their business. Thank you so much for listening and taking notes. So together, we can apply these very same principles that Troy mentioned and use them in our own businesses and companies. It's always an honor to have these ultra successful business professionals on this program sharing insights on what made them and what keeps them in the top 0.5% and 1% of all business professionals. Please join us on our next episode where we will keep having access to more high net worth startup and serial entrepreneurs, C-level executives from companies of all sizes, and we'll sneak in a few Hollywood celebrities, which a few of them are already scheduled for future episodes. And would you be willing just to take 7 to 10 seconds and please like, comment, and give a 5-star rating to this podcast on the platform which you are listening. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more Raw Lessons Revealed. See you next episode.